The Journey to the Honey, a lesson in nature's balance. The story begins with Bakari telling his son Juma that the honey guide bird is calling for him and he will follow him to bring home a treat. Both father and son then follow the singing bird out of the village into the forest and walk past a number of different kinds of wildlife: giraffes, ostriches, zebras, and a family of warthogs. The sound of the honey guide bird's call echoed through the trees, a rhythmic and almost melodic sound that seemed to beckon them forward. "Do you hear it, Juma?" Bakari asked, glancing down at his son. Juma nodded eagerly. "Yes, father, the bird is calling. It sounds like it knows the way." Bakari chuckled softly. "It does indeed, my son. The honey guide bird has been guiding people like us for generations. It knows the forest better than anyone." As they continued on, the path they followed grew narrower, the forest denser. The warm sunlight filtered through the branches above, casting dappled shadows on the forest floor. Along the way, the air was alive with the sounds of other creatures, the calls of monkeys high in the trees, the rustling of leaves as small animals scurried about, and the distant sound of a zebra's whistle. They walked past a group of giraffes grazing lazily, their long necks swaying as they nibbled on the tender leaves of a nearby acacia. The sight of the giraffes made Juma's eyes widen in wonder. "Look, father, the giraffes are so tall. How do they reach the leaves so high?" Bakari smiled at his son's innocent curiosity. "The giraffes are special, Juma. Their necks are long so they can reach the branches that no other animal can. They have a way of adapting to the forest, just like we do." They walked a little further, passing a family of warthogs rooting through the dirt for food. The young piglets squealed in delight, their small hooves kicking up little clouds of dust as they played. Juma laughed, his face lighting up at the sight of the playful creatures. "Look at them go. They're so funny, father." Bakari chuckled along with his son. "Warthogs may look clumsy, but they are strong and resourceful. Even though they look awkward, they know exactly how to find food in the forest." As they walked, the honey guide bird continued to sing ahead, guiding them ever deeper into the forest. The path was becoming steeper now, and the air was growing warmer, the scent of wildflowers and damp earth filling their lungs. The father and son exchanged a look, a silent understanding passing between them. "Juma," Bakari said softly, "today I will teach you how to gather honey, but you must remember that it is not just about the honey. It is about respecting the forest and all the creatures that live here. Every tree, every animal, every bird has a place in this world, and we must honor that." Juma nodded, his young face serious as he listened to his father's words. "I understand, father." The honey guide bird's call grew louder, more urgent, as it fluttered ahead of them. "We are close now," Bakari said, a spark of excitement in his eyes. "The honey is near." And so father and son pressed on, following the bird's song as the forest seemed to come alive around them. The sun was higher now, and the forest had begun to feel even more alive, as if the land itself was waking with them. The path was narrower here, winding through thick underbrush, but the honey guide bird was still ahead, its song ringing clearly through the trees. Juma's steps quickened as they followed the bird's call. His father, though steady, kept pace, occasionally casting a watchful eye on the surroundings. "Father," Juma asked, his voice full of wonder as he surveyed the thickening woods, "why does the bird want us to follow it? Is it just because it likes the sound of its own song?" Bakari smiled. "Ah, no, my son. The honey guide bird doesn't sing just for fun. It calls because it knows where the honey is hidden. The bees build their hives high in the trees, and the bird's song helps us find them. The bird has a special gift. It can lead us to the hives, and we help it in return by taking the honey, but only if we are careful." Juma's eyes brightened. "So the bird is like a guide?" "Yes," Bakari said, his tone warm with pride. "A guide and a partner. We must never forget that. In the forest, everything has its role. The bird helps us, and in turn we must respect its wisdom and the life it leads here." They passed more wildlife as they moved deeper into the forest. An ostrich flapping its wings in a burst of energy as it dashed past them, a lone jackal prowling silently along the edge of the thicket, and a troop of baboons chattering above, swinging from tree to tree. Each animal seemed to have its own place, its own rhythm in the dance of the forest. After some time, the song of the honey guide bird grew louder, more insistent. They had arrived at a large, ancient baobab tree, its trunk wide and gnarled, with thick branches reaching toward the sky. The honey guide bird landed gracefully on one of the higher branches, its call now a sharp trill, almost as if it were excited. Bakari stopped a few paces from the tree and turned to Juma. "Here we are, Juma. The honey is in the tree." Juma looked up, his gaze following his father's finger as it pointed to the dark, hollowed-out section of the baobab where a colony of bees had built their hive. The bees buzzed around the entrance, their wings creating a soft, constant hum. "That's where the honey lives," Bakari said softly, "but it's not always easy to get to. You must be patient and careful. If you move too quickly or too recklessly, the bees will be angry. You must wait for the right moment." Juma's heart raced. He had always heard stories about how dangerous bees could be, and though the idea of honey thrilled him, the buzzing hive seemed almost magical in its mystery. He stood still, watching intently as his father began to prepare. Bakari reached into a small leather pouch he wore around his waist and pulled out a long stick. "This is a special tool," he explained, handing it to Juma. "But before we do that, we need to distract the bees. They are very protective of their honey, but they won't chase us if we show them respect." With steady hands, Bakari showed Juma how to carefully tie a piece of cloth soaked in smoke around the end of the stick. "This is to calm the bees. The smoke makes them sleepy, so they won't be as quick to sting. You must only use enough. Too much will make them angry, and too little won't work." Juma carefully repeated his father's movements, mimicking his actions. He could feel the weight of his father's trust on him, and though his hands trembled a little, he kept his focus. This was a rite of passage, something he had been waiting for all his young life. Once the stick was prepared, Bakari gave Juma a nod. "Are you ready?" Juma nodded, determination in his eyes. "Yes, father." Together they approached the baobab, and Bakari gently tapped the hive with the smoke-filled stick. The bees inside stirred, but the smoke worked its magic. The buzzing slowed, and the forest around them seemed to hold its breath. Now came the tricky part. Bakari reached up with another stick, this one longer, and carefully began to dislodge the hive from the hollow. The bees buzzed softly, but did not swarm. Juma watched in awe, his heart pounding, as his father worked skillfully, his movements calm and deliberate. With a soft thunk, the hive finally fell, landing in a pile of dry leaves beneath the tree. The bees, still drowsy from the smoke, slowly drifted away. Bakari smiled, looking down at Juma. "We've done it, my son. Now we must carefully remove the honey." Juma knelt beside his father, feeling a thrill in the air. The hive was heavy, sticky with golden honey, and a rich, sweet aroma filled the air. With a careful hand, Bakari used a sharp knife to cut open the hive, revealing the glistening honeycombs inside. "Here," Bakari said, offering Juma a small piece of honeycomb, "taste the reward of patience and respect." Juma took the piece eagerly, and as he tasted the sweet honey for the first time, his eyes lit up. It was like nothing he had ever imagined, rich, golden, and full of the forest's warmth. He looked up at his father, his face filled with awe. "This is amazing, father, the sweetest thing I've ever tasted." Bakari smiled, watching his son with pride. "The forest has many treasures, Juma, but remember, it only gives what we take care to earn. The honey is a gift, and so is everything else here. The birds, the trees, the animals, they all have their place, just like us." Juma nodded, savoring the honey and feeling a deep connection to the forest around him. He could feel the weight of the lesson settling into his heart. This was more than just about finding honey. It was about understanding the balance of life and the ways in which every creature, no matter how small, was part of something greater. Together, father and son walked back toward the village, the honey safely tucked away in a leather pouch. The honey guide bird flew above them, singing a final soft note as it disappeared into the sky. The forest around them seemed to smile, as if it too knew the bond that had been formed and the lesson that had been passed down through generations. As they made their way home, Bakari glanced at Juma and said, "You did well today, my son. One day, you will teach your own children how to find the honey, just as I've taught you." Juma smiled, the forest's wisdom already beginning to settle into his heart. "I will, father. I will."